Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Inside Groove right here on Northwest Access TV. I'm Nick Mumley, alongside Dustin Tanner.
I just got in here. A long day, but I'm excited to talk some racing. There was a lot that went on this past week.
Yeah, such a busy weekend. There's stuff that we just aren't going to have time to get to tonight because there was so much going on. But maybe next week with the off week that you've been so excited about.
I've been talking about.
So yeah, a lot to get to tonight. But first, the more serious news from the IndyCar side of things. Driver Robert Wickens, who posted 4 straight top 5 finishes coming into the race at Pocono yesterday, obviously hurt very badly in the crash there on lap 7. And what we know right now is that he's broken both his ankles, according to Paul Tracy, who's a longtime reporter for IndyCar. He's broken both his ankles, his arm. He's got bruised lungs and spinal injuries. So obviously a very bad situation there. Also, we'll be talking about Kurt Busch, who won at Bristol for his 6th Bristol win on Saturday night. We're going to have Xfinity Series driver Kaz Grala on at 6:20. Very, very cool interview there. And then we've got another interview tonight. 16 years old, Evan Hallstrom, a race winner in the late model division at Thunder Road. Just 16 years of age, and he got the win. He's had a great season so far. He'll be on at 6:45 to talk some local racing. But before we get to the other stuff, I want to talk about this IndyCar thing because this is something that's really bugging me right now, and it's bugged me for the last 10 years watching IndyCar growing up. I mean, something has to be done for the safety of these cars. You can't keep having drivers getting injured like this.
Well, I think, when you look at the Indy cars themselves, that they're not really, they're not the safest cars. You look at the way they're designed, and there really isn't a lot you can do with them safety-wise, right? But you can do a couple of things. I don't think they should run ovals.
Exactly, yeah.
I think if you're going to go to Pocono, I get the history. There's a lot of history behind a track like Pocono. So if you're going to go to Pocono as a road course. Use one of the road course layouts where it's nice and it's slower, and the fastest you can get is maybe 150 because, that was just every time they go to Pocono, every time they go to Texas, Las Vegas, these tracks, you're just kind of like, something's going to happen at one of these races because they're going 200 miles per hour. It's not
right, yeah, it's definitely just not what you want to see, and we did post the poll on our Twitter there at Inside Groove TV. Check it out on Twitter. We posted a poll: should IndyCars run ovals starting next season? And we've got last time I checked, it was about 20 and 80. 80% of people were saying that IndyCar should do nothing after this and just let things go. And I just don't understand that because, we saw James Hinchcliffe a couple of years ago at the Indianapolis 500 get seriously hurt, almost die because he pierced an artery with a piece of debris. We've seen Dan Weldon. We've seen Justin Wilson. I mean, NASCAR hasn't had a death or an injury since since Dale Earnhardt. And that's 20 years that NASCAR's had this figured out. They've seen a couple of minor injuries, but nothing nearly this bad. NASCAR, when they lost their big star in Dale Earnhardt, they immediately started working tirelessly to get to improve the safety of the cars and of the drivers and of the fans too. And you've really seen those efforts pay off in the last 20 years. But IndyCar hasn't done the same thing. They lost Dan Weldon, they lost Justin Wilson, and they were kind of just saying, oh, this is what comes with the sport.
Well, it's really hard, and I want to apologize because, my mic was not turned on. Rookie mistake, long day, coaching a volleyball team, doing a bunch of stuff, walking in here like one of our wonderful co-hosts on the Best Damn Sports Show Wednesday night with like 1 minute left to go as we're in. But, you would think that after so many years, they would say, okay, maybe we should do something. And they have, to IndyCar's credit, they have tried a couple of things to make the cars safer. But the fact of the matter is that, Formula One did the shield thing this year on the front of their cars, and I think IndyCar needs to adopt that.
They really do. Yeah.
Drivers hate it, but you got to have a full cage around a driver nowadays. In 2018, at 200 miles per hour, you have to have a full cage.
And the bottom line is, if they're going to keep running these ovals like this, I think the drivers' families would hate a lot less for them, for their drivers and their family members to still be alive instead of being either killed or seriously injured in a crash like this. Because you got to think of not only the drivers but their families. I mean, this is just stuff that you don't mess around with. And IndyCar, I feel like, has messed around way too long with this issue, and it's only going to keep happening unless they do something.
Well, unless if you make the cars safer, people are going to keep dying. And this is the thing about IndyCar, and I guess it's one of those things that you kind of sign up for when you sign up for IndyCar, but it's really not fair to, like Wickens, he just touched the back wheel.
Right.
Like, we're talking like a real not serious touch, and now he's got a couple of broken ankles. He's having a spinal surgery tonight. He's alert and he's awake, but I thought he was dead. I really did. I really thought we saw something.
It looked a lot like Dan Weldon's crash at Las Vegas that we've all seen, where that halo probably would have ended up, if not saving Dan Weldon's life, lessening the injuries tremendously. So
that's why you adopt the halo, because the halo, it's ugly. You hate the aerodynamics. It's not, but it stops some of the force.
Right.
And it makes it just slightly safer.
Right. So rant on IndyCar over. I just really hope that they ultimately go out there and do something and open their eyes on this issue now, because it's really sad to see drivers get hurt and killed like this. And as fans of racing, you just don't want to see it at all.
I was just at that Pocono racetrack a couple weekends ago, and
it's dangerous for NASCAR.
I saw my driver go into the wall 200 miles per hour, and man, if he wasn't in a full cage, he wouldn't be here. To think of an Indy car going into the wall, it's sickening.
Right. Yeah. So moving on, the Xfinity Series was at Bristol on Friday night, in what was a pretty interesting race. Kyle Busch.
Such a weird race.
It really was. Kyle Busch definitely seemed to have the class of the field early on, but then he ran himself into the wall a couple times, broke the right front of the car, and was out of the race by lap 70. So that opened up the door for Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell to go at it all night long, and
it was a lot of fun to watch.
It was so much fun to watch. One of the best Xfinity races I've seen in a long time. And drivers using both the high and low sides of the racetrack. You had the rookie in Bell and the kind of veteran now, I guess you could say, in Kyle Larson going at it. This was just a lot of fun to watch. And, it made me think, why could somebody watch this and say that the Cup drivers shouldn't be allowed in the Xfinity Series?
I think there was a really good article that came out today by Matt Weaver of Autosport, talking about how the Cup schedule is kind of just set. It's just set in a certain way, and there's really nothing you can do about it. And I don't think it's the drivers being in Xfinity. I think it's the fact that the tracks are bad. Right. I think, at a track like Bristol, where there is really no, I don't even think it's the drivers as much as it's just the competitive advantage that these guys have with these super funded, these Cup teams running in Xfinity cars. It's not fair. I think at a track like Bristol, it's a lot more fun to watch because everybody's on even ground. But it was such a fun race to watch.
Right. So let's take a quick look at the Xfinity Series point standings with one race to go before the playoffs begin. And man, this is quite a battle that we got going here. We've been watching this for the last couple of weeks. Justin Allgaier jumped up to second place behind Christopher Bell. Bell kind of faded at the end of that thing as Kyle Larson went on to win. And Elliott Sadler, it was pretty cool to see him give the command before the start of that race. In his most likely last race at Bristol, a track that he's had so much success at. Cole Custer for Stuart Haas, he's back there in fourth. Daniel Hemrick had a real rough night at Bristol and went from about 20 points to 42 points back. I think the regular season title is pretty much out of reach for him, but playoffs are coming up in one more race, so we'll see what happens there.
One more race at a road course, and this is what I love about the Xfinity Series. I love how they have their playoff deciding race at a road course. There is nothing better than that, in my opinion. And, you saw Jeremy Clements sneak in last year for the win, and it'll be interesting to see this weekend because, Justin Allgaier still got a shot at that regular season title. And Christopher Bell, he did okay on the road courses, but it'll be interesting to see who wins that because, you get a playoff boost going into there. And Allgaier is interesting because, he used to be a Team Penske development driver, and, I wouldn't mind seeing him in the Cup again. He's earned a shot up at the top right again.
Yeah, they were definitely, and they were talking about that on during the broadcast on Friday night. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. I think that he's really done what he needs to do. This has been a comeback season for him, like none other. He's really shown that he can drive that thing. So, there's a couple of rides opening up at the Cup Series level. Who knows? Maybe we'll see him up there. But getting to the Cup Series now, a fantastic race at Bristol.
No, it wasn't.
Let's take a look at the results from that Bristol race there on Saturday night. Kurt Busch, we saw him come from pretty much the middle of the pack, wasn't really making any noise all race long, came out and won this thing after a string of late cautions. Kyle Larson snake-bitten again in the Cup Series. Second place in both Bristol races this year. Sooner or later, he'll win one. Chase Elliott had a really impressive charge.
Chase Elliott came from nowhere and finished third.
Elliott and Logano were two cars that were up front for a lot of the race and then kind of fell off with about 100 laps to go. And I remember with that last restart there, they restarted 12th and 13th, I think, and then they just tore their way right up through the field. And I think if there was another 20, 25 laps to go in that race, I think that we could have been talking a different story with Elliott and Logano.
Well, Elliott was on Larson's bumper in the last lap, and boy, it's heartbreaking when there's a driver who's got a really good car, but it hasn't come in yet. And that was what we saw with Kyle Larson, was that you saw him just chasing down Kurt Busch, and then he slipped it into the gray stuff one time and just lost it. And that's a car that was a long-run car, and Kurt Busch was able to just drive away. And Kurt Busch has been really sneakily good this year. He was fourth in the points all year. He just hadn't gotten a win yet, and you don't think about him. And it was nice seeing somebody win. Are we going to talk about the first couple of laps of that race?
Yes, of course. We've got to get to the first couple of laps of this thing. Just a crazy start and a crazy day for Kyle Busch.
Oh, man.
As a whole, I mean, he wrecks on lap 2. That took out, and that was just a weird crash because Kyle, he's kind of half spun himself out, and then he was just laying sideways in the track, and all the back markers just piled right into him.
Arca brakes.
And it was just a really, really weird crash because you had Kyle Busch and then all the guys that run from 30th to 38th all involved in the same wreck.
Well, it was interesting because it was just kind of Kyle Busch was mid-pack and then he spun and there's nobody had places to go. My guy, Bubba, got taken out because he went as far down on the track as he could and just got hit by somebody. There was 5, it's like when you're on the interstate of 5 lanes of traffic and none of the traffic is moving. And it was just it was amazing to watch because it's lap 2 and they're wrecking. It's oh, that came out of nowhere. And it's oh, the night of these guys is done. And Kyle Busch's car, man, that thing got tore up. And then the whole thing about him being 2 laps down and fighting off the leaders to stay only 2 laps down. Yeah. What an amazing, I kind of was pulling for him to win at the end there.
Right, yeah, and I kind of was too. I don't want to admit that I was pulling for Kyle Busch at the end, but I definitely was because just imagine the race win diecast that would have come out if Kyle Busch would have won that race. I think that would have set a record for most spot diecast car of all time, which would be pretty cool. But still, and not only just the wreck on lap 2 and coming back from that. He takes out Martin Truex Jr. and that was kind of an interesting one. But
that was interesting for me because that was just Kyle Busch just had such a good run.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know how good of a run you have until you just barely get into the guy's quarter panel. On at Bristol, you get into the guy's panel like that, he's gone. And Martin Truex, he was mad, but I don't think that was a racing incident. That wasn't Kyle Busch wasn't going to I'm dumping Martin Truex. He just had such a good run. There was nothing that could be done there. But
yeah, and that was, and Truex, if you watch Truex, didn't really have all that great of a car. He was trying to stay on the lead lap for the majority of this race.
And he was in second. He found himself in second out of nowhere.
Right. And that's when things got really weird. But Truex, this was kind of proving that, Martin Truex and Fernando still don't really have short tracks quite figured out yet. which, it might be concerning. We'll talk about them later on in the show. I think some pretty troubling news coming from him over the weekend at Bristol. But another thing I wanted to talk about here, staying with the Cup Series, was I heard a lot of people calling this the best Bristol race of all time. Jeff Gluck's "Was it a good race?" poll.
94%, right?
Yeah, all time in the 3 years that he's been polling races, the best race of the last 3 years, according to the fans. I think I just want to know how you think this stacks up among the great Bristol night races, like with Earnhardt and Labonte's battles in 1995 and 99, and then Gordon's bump and run on Rusty Wallace in 02. And if you remember that race, it was just dry. Like I think there was 10 different driver run-ins where somebody was mad at somebody else, and that just made it.
If Martin Truex Jr. hadn't been able to get his car to the pit road, I think we would have had a helmet throw. I really do think we would have had a helmet throw because the way he got out of that thing. I think Bristol had the repave done, and everybody's like, "Oh, Bristol is bad. Bristol's gone." But I think the new Bristol that we have seen developed with this car, I think it's better. I think you have two lines now with the stuff that you can put on the bottom of the groove to bring the bottom groove in, and the top groove. It drives like a dirt track. You got guys on the outside, and I like it. You can have two, 3 wide at Bristol now, and you can get away with it. And I think it makes the race a lot better. And I think the spring race was just as good. I think it just, not many people saw it because of the rain delay. But no, I think Bristol is back. I like the new Bristol. I like it. It's good. It's a good track again. And this race really highlighted how well you could do on a track like this. It was a lot of fun to watch.
And because of that, with Bristol changing so much, that's why I don't really think that you can kind of put this race in the same kind of category as those 3 races that I've mentioned earlier, 02 and 1999-95, because it's like those were on different racetracks.
You used to have to move somebody out of the way to win a race at Bristol. Now you can erase them out of the way.
Yeah. I mean, we're really not gonna see that many bump and runs anymore, simply because there's 2 lanes of racing. So there was 19 lead changes at Bristol among 9 drivers. That's pretty much unheard of for that racetrack. And everybody was in it. There was just we saw cars that would they would come on and then they'd fall off. Paul Menard, probably the best example.
I jinxed Menard. And I apologize.
Some crazy stuff going on in the beginning of that race too. Just dry. I don't think I've ever seen cars break like Paul Menard's and Kyle Busch's did this weekend. Those are 2 incidents that I've
the center of the wheel
seen.
coming off. I've never heard of the center of a wheel coming off, which is interesting because it makes me wonder what they're doing with the Penske cars in that case. Because Ryan Blaney was really fast for the first half of the race. Yeah. Joey Logano had a top 5. If you're putting so much stress on the center of the wheel, I wonder what they're doing with their chassis then, because they must have found something, but it doesn't stick well. Because I've never heard of that happening to a car before, which stinks because Paul Menard came out he came out with a lot of speed. He had a chance to, win the race, but lap 5, his car's broken. So I don't know what happened there. Yeah,
and so one last thing that I wanted to discuss here about the Cup race was, do you think, yes or no, do you think that Kurt Busch's win is going to impact his future at Stewart-Haas?
No. I think Kurt Busch has been gone from Stewart-Haas since last year because he wants to be paid what he's worth and what he's proven he's worth, and they don't want to pay him that much. They can't.
Yeah, and it's I would have to agree with you. I think that he's long gone, especially after the comments that we saw from Gene Haas over the weekend, where he said that he was asked, what are Kurt Busch's intentions? And he said, maybe you should ask Chip Ganassi and Jamie McMurray, which I kind of took as okay, shots fired here. I don't think the relationship between those two is as strong as it needs to be if he's going to come back.
And I think it was nice for Kurt Busch to win the race he did win this weekend was in the monster car, not in the Haas car either. So, that helps the brand, obviously winning in the correct car to... Right. I don't know. I think he's gone, but I don't know if he's necessarily going to Chip Ganassi. I don't know. I think it might open a couple other doors for him, but I think he's gone.
Yeah. All right, so let's get to our first interview of the night here. Kaz Gralla on the show here, the driver of the number 61 Ford Fusion in the NASCAR Xfinity Series for Fury Race Cars. So let's get to that interview. Kaz Gralla. Today's guest is the driver of the number 61 Ford Mustang for Fury Racing Cars in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. He's the youngest driver to ever win a race at Daytona and has 4 top 10s this season. It's Kaz Gralla. How you doing, Kaz?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm pretty good. So, there's no doubt that this season has seen its fair share of ups and downs for you, from having to switch teams mid-season to having to miss races due to sponsorship, but you've also had a ton of really good results. Take us through the season so far and just the emotions involved with such a roller coaster year.
Well, it definitely has been eventful, that's for sure. I started the season out at JGL Racing with the plan of running full-time there. The team owner had graciously put me in a car for the full season, and I was excited about that. We started off with a great run at Daytona. We had some other really good runs, but then things definitely started to get a little shaky towards the end, and unfortunately, because of health reasons, the team owner had to shut our program down, and so 10 races in, that kind of left me with nowhere to go. So in just a matter of a week, pretty much, we got Fury Race Cars up and running with a couple Xfinity cars, and right out of the gates, we got a top 10 at Charlotte, which was so exciting for us. And we followed that up with a couple more top 10s and even a top 5 at Daytona in a show car just about a month ago. Yeah. So we've had some really, really good highlights, but as you said, it was not without some stress and some trials and tribulations in between. We have so far missed 3 races this year, unfortunately, just because we weren't able to find the funding for them. But we will be racing this coming weekend at Road America, and we're really excited about that.
Yeah, and you mentioned that July Daytona race, and that was such a story. It made headlines all over the place. You finished 5th place and ran top 10 the majority of the day in a car built in 2009. You want to take us through how that came together?
Yeah, so of course for the speedway races, the plate track stuff, you kind of need a different car than what you would run on most of the other ovals. It has a metal body on it, whereas we're running plastic bodies at the other tracks. So we did not have a car that we could run Daytona with, so we kind of posed the question to some other teams, some other Ford teams, and said, hey, does anyone have some extra speedway cars just kind of lying around that we'd be able to use? And Stuart Haas actually said, hey, well, we've got this car that we absorbed when we brought on the Biaggi program, and they said, we're just going to use it as a show car, because the race last month at Daytona was the last race ever that you'll be allowed to run a metal body in the Xfinity Series. So they said, well, after this weekend, this car is going to be useless to us. We're just going to make it a show car because we won't be able to race it again. They said, well, how about this? Bring it back to us in the same condition that we give it to you, and you can run it. So we got really lucky. Actually, I think we might have been darn near the only car in that race to finish it without a scratch on it, which was good because we got a good result. But even better because we got it back to the shop on Monday. We pulled the decals off of it and sent it right back to Stuart Haas. Didn't have to do a thing to it. So we kind of lucked out on that deal and got a really good run out of it. So that was exciting for us.
Yeah, that's quite a story. So staying on the topic of Daytona, you've pretty much got that place figured out. You've run just a few races there, but you finished top 5 in all of your races in the top 3 series in NASCAR. Not to mention that awesome Daytona win back in 2016 in the Truck Series. Now, what about plate racing do you love the most?
It's definitely exciting. It's so stressful, and the funny part is, after I won the truck race there last year, which was my first plate race ever in NASCAR.
Really?
Even though I won it, I still said after, I'm like, gosh, that was way too stressful. I don't think I like this kind of racing. I can't take it. But now that I've got a few more under my belt and had some more success and some less successful runs on them too, I've come to appreciate it a little bit more, and I've definitely been able to relax some and get used to it a little. So I just really like the adrenaline of it and the fact that it's it's a completely different kind of race. Like, sure, you have to have a fast car. If you're going to go up there and you're going to contend for the win at a plate track, it's not 100% equalized. You need a fast car, but there are way more people at a plate track that have a fast enough car to race for the win than at a normal race. So it does equalize you, gives a lot more people a shot, and it puts a lot in the driver's hands, or more specifically head, because you really have to think your way through the race and play it smart, survive till the end, make good decisions. And that's how you really finish a plate race well, is by making those good decisions. And so far, for whatever reason, that seems to be suiting my style. Oddly, only at Daytona. I can't seem to catch a break at Talladega, but hopefully I'll be able to continue that streak at Daytona the next time I run there.
Yeah, for sure. So switching gears here, you're from Boston, which isn't exactly a racing hotbed by any means. What kind of challenges come with being based so far from the whole NASCAR scene down in North Carolina?
Well, you're right. It was an unlikely path for me to make it to NASCAR from Boston, because it's all stick and ball sports up there pretty much.
Yeah.
But it just so happened that my dad used to race. Now, he raced sports cars in what's now IMSA, so a little bit different stuff, but kind of the same basic idea. Enough at least to introduce me to the idea of motorsports, and ultimately I wound up in a go-kart and decided, hey, this is really fun. I like this even more than any other sport, so I'm going to stick with it. And that's exactly what I did. And I lived still in Massachusetts full-time right up until June of last year when I graduated high school. And now I am living down in the Mooresville, North Carolina area, because, as you said, you kind of have to.
Right.
If you're racing at this level, this is where you have to be. But I still spent almost my whole life in Boston, and I'll always be a Boston kid.
All right, so what's your favorite track to run in the Northeast, and what is one track up here that you haven't run yet but you'd really like to at some point in your career?
So the funny part is I haven't raced that much in the Northeast compared to a lot of other guys that come out of New England. I actually did the majority of my legend car and late model racing down here in the Southeast.
Oh, really?
I spent all my years in go-karts up in Massachusetts at a place called F1 Boston, and gosh, I spent 6 years doing that. Yeah. But at the point I was kind of traveling for racing, I did a lot of that traveling down here. But I still have an answer for you. New Hampshire Motor Speedway is one of the few tracks I have raced at up there, and I really enjoy getting to race there. It's a fun track. I've had success there, but the best part about it is just being able to have friends and family and everyone that I grew up with coming out to the race, because it is only about even less than an hour and a half away from the house that I grew up in. So that's always really nice to go and compete there, which we did just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. And one last question here to get you out. You know, we're up here in Vermont. The big track up here is Thunder Road International Speed Bowl. We've seen a lot of NASCAR drivers throughout the years give it a run. Kyle Busch, the most recent one. Do you think you'd ever see yourself coming up here for a race?
Hey, I certainly wouldn't pass it up, and I'll bet you, I don't know, but I guarantee you my crew chief has been to many, many races there, because my crew chief, Shane Wilson, is actually from Vermont.
Really?
And did the whole short track scene there for years. And most recently, he was Brennan Gaughan's crew chief at RCR for the past however many years, a bunch. So I'm sure that's a place he's very familiar with.
All right, Kaz, thanks for calling in today, and good luck coming up at Road America next week.
Thank you very much.
So that was Kaz Gralla from the Xfinity Series. Great interview with him. So if you want to check him out on the track, he's coming up. They're racing at Road America Saturday at 3:00. That's on NBC Sports Network. So it was nice talking with him. So let's get right into our show topics, though, and we got a lot of them because a lot happened over the course of the week.
It's been a busy week.
It has been. And I do kind of want to pick up the Kurt Busch thing for a little bit more here, because I mean, if you had to put a place where Kurt Busch would go next year, where would you put your money on?
I would say right now it's Chip Ganassi Racing, but there is apparently some landmark news that's about to hit that's going to be earth-shattering, and I don't know. I don't believe it. But I think Kurt is going to end up at Chip Ganassi Racing because I think he wants to finish his career. He wants to run some other I think he wants to run IndyCar. I think he wants to run IndyCar
that would be
more
cool.
time, and Chip Ganassi could do it. And I think, Chip is not happy with the results in the one car. As you can see, the 42 can be a front of the pack car. I think Kurt would enjoy ending his career with that one car team. I think he could do really well towards the end of his racing cycle.
Yeah, and so moving on to another driver that might be in trouble for 2019, Martin Truex Jr. His quote to Jeff Gluck on, I believe, Friday afternoon at Bristol was that they need sponsorship to run that team next year, which kind of says a lot about where the sport's going, in my view, because Truex, obviously part of the big three. He's won 4 races this year, won 8 races last year, and won the championship as well. This is one of the top teams in NASCAR talking about possibly shutting down simply because they don't have any sponsorship for next year.
Well, Barney Visser has said that he's not shutting it down, and I think he will stand by his word and not shut it down. I think Martin Truex Jr., I think he's going to the 41. I think all the signs are pointing he's going to Stewart-Haas because name me a team that can run a car without having a full sponsorship. Stewart-Haas Racing. They already have a relationship with Bass Pro Shops from Tony Stewart's days running those schemes. I think he might be going there, and I think Furniture Row Racing might be downsizing. And it makes sense because it costs millions of dollars to run these cars. You want a championship. You don't need to keep dumping millions of dollars into this operation when you've gotten to the pinnacle of the sport. Now run it for fun. Be a developmental team. Help out the Toyota Racing development. But no, I think the earth-shattering news is that the defending champion is switching teams, but I think he's going to the 41. I think it's pretty... I don't know, unless if they find somebody willing to come through, I think it's pretty much all but certain.
Right.
By the way it sounds, by the way people are talking.
Yeah, and it's not exactly easy to find sponsorship these days either. I mean, we've seen that just with Jimmy Johnson, the seven-time champ. He's got 84 career wins, and he doesn't have a sponsor for next year. Now, I mean, obviously, you'd think that he would be back, sponsor or no sponsor.
Oh, he'll be back. I think Hendrick's got enough sponsors,
right,
too.
Hendrick can, you got guys like Chase Elliott who have 5 sponsors, so they can go over it and run different races. I'm sure Exalta would be willing to help out with Johnson. He would not run an unsponsored car for Hendrick Motorsports under any circumstances, but the lack of no new sponsor there, too, and Truex, I mean, that's just, to me, I see that as... This is a sport that is failing.
It just costs way too much. It costs way too much to run a car nowadays. You have to cut back on car costs because the fact of the matter is, gone are the days where someone's going to drop, $10, $15 million are going to sponsor all your races. Now you got to find companies that are willing to spend maybe $50,000 for 6 or 7 races.
Right.
Find companies that are willing to fill up those gaps. That's why JTG Racing has done so well, is because they don't have one company sponsoring their car. Right. They have a bunch of companies sponsoring their cars.
They have upwards of 10 to 15 sponsors each. Like that car, the 37 and 47 will look different every week.
You could get all your grocery shopping done just by looking at the 37 and the 47, and you wouldn't be missing a thing.
Right. But yeah, and it's one of those deals where it's kind of too bad because, 10 years ago you could associate a driver with their car. Simply, I mean, I remember growing up knowing, looking through the field, even in non-high definition television broadcasts from 2007, I could say, okay, there's my favorite driver, Tony Stewart, because that's the orange car. Yeah. And I wouldn't even have to see it to see what car he was racing. Now, every single week, they're different. I mean, we're going to see drivers running 5-6 different paint schemes a year with 5 or 6 different primary sponsors. So it's kind of, it definitely has gotten too expensive to run these cars, which is, it's sad to see because, attendance is down, viewership is down, and sponsorships down. So NASCAR's got to figure out some way to get out of this rut before more serious stuff starts to happen.
I think you sell the sport. I really do. I think the France family needs to sell and get out now. And I think we're moving to a place where at some point, you remember the True Value NASCAR, the True Value series they used to have? You remember those?
I believe so,
where all the cars had basically the same paint scheme. I think we're getting to that place where eventually there will be a sponsor that, maybe in 30 to 40 years that just buys the name right and buys the ability to put their logo on every hood, and maybe the cars will look the same. And I'm fine with that if the racing's still good.
Yeah, you're talking about the IROC series?
Yeah, IROC, that's what we're talking. True Value was the sponsor of IROC for a while.
Yeah.
But it's getting to the point where, I find it cool to have other paint schemes, though, because, you have many options. But
and I think that's part of, what associates the driver, too. So, I can definitely see it going that way. But, man, you'd hope that it wouldn't end up coming to that because, at the end of the day, the fans see a certain car, like for instance, my little brother is a Kyle Busch fan because he likes M&Ms. And I think if that ultimately went away, I think that would kind of be a sad day for the sport.
Yeah, it would be, but it depends. It's going to be interesting to see what the sponsorship model that NASCAR is working on, with the tiers of sponsorship turns out to be. I think we're going to a place where everything gets centralized a little bit, and that'll be helpful for the overall longevity of the sport. But I don't know. You can only milk a dead cow so many days.
Right.
If you don't, you got to get a new cow eventually, right? Like you got to get a healthy cow, bud. And I think NASCAR needs to look at their sport and really needs to look at what tracks they're running, what races fans are responding to. Because Pocono was almost sold out. Those stands at Pocono, they weren't empty. And New Hampshire, for a 4-hour rain delay, the one
still
race
a decent turnout.
Still a good turnout.
Yeah, and the same with Watkins Glen as well.
Watkins Glen sold out
fourth year in a row.
What are people, Bristol had good attendance. What do people want? They want short tracks. They want unique tracks.
Yeah, and Kyle Larson put it perfectly in his post-race interview. We need more Bristols. Mm-hmm. And he straight up said, if there's going to be racing like that every week, you get rid of the Michigans and Kentuckys of the world, we're going to have, this sport will have no problem putting sponsors on cars and putting people in the seats. So I think that's where you start. Obviously, that's not going to be a cheap thing to do because there's billions of dollars put into these tracks already that are just kind of, dead tracks. Nothing happens at them. Cars will get out there and they'll run around in single file for 200 laps and then the race will be over.
Well, I'll say the same thing I've been saying is that SMI and ISC need to realize that the tracks that they're running now, people don't like most of them, and they really need to realize that in order to keep making money off this sport, we're going to have to get rid of a Michigan race. We're going to have to get rid of a Las Vegas race. We're going to have We're going to have to get rid of some of these tracks. Look, one time around at the 1.5 milers is fine, but the only 1.5 mile tracks that are good are the ones that are nice and worn, like Chicagoland, Atlanta. Yeah. They have to have tracks where the pavement has been worn in because they give them character, and that's how you get the character in the cookie cutter tracks, by having worn pavement, not by having a cookie cutter. And you see it. Kentucky sucks. Kentucky is by far the worst track on the circuit. Kentucky, Kansas, I'm trying to think of another one that's bad like that. Michigan, these tracks that it's fresh paved. Yeah. Fresh paved is evil.
Yeah, and I think that you got to look at it this way too. You think about kind of the peak of NASCAR. Technically, viewership-wise, that's 2005, but I think of it as the year 2001, with the new TV deal where they brought in Fox and NBC, and you had the whole story about Dale Earnhardt, and everybody was watching NASCAR. It was as close as it ever got to being a major national sport. And that was the year that Kansas and Chicagoland were introduced. And California was, not too long before that. And then after that, you had Kentucky later on. So and now you look at it 20 years later, NASCAR's in serious decline. I think there's a direct correlation there.
I think the only track that should, California I get because Roger Penske built that because he wanted a track out there. But the rest of them, Atlanta was your classic 1.5 miler because of the way it finished. And Charlotte copied the template. And Charlotte can be okay sometimes. But it's just...
Well, even Atlanta back in the day was shaped more like Dover until the late 90s when they switched it over to that Charlotte and Texas look. So I think these 1.5 mile tracks are what's bringing the sport down. And you look at how the sport... came up back in the 50s and 60s, and it's on these short dirt pavement tracks back in the South. I think you got to sell NASCAR, and then whoever buys it just reinvent it and look at what got it popular in the first place. I think you take that route again, it'll still work.
So do we have time? What's our next segment that we're doing here? What is on the to-do list?
We have Evan Hallstrom in 5 minutes.
Okay, so we got 5 minutes to chat about this because here's my idea to make NASCAR great again. This is what we're going to do. We are going to take the schedule. We are going to have 5 road courses. We are going to have our 4 restrictor plate tracks. We're going to have 8 to 10 short courses or short tracks, which gives you let's say 10 just for the sake of math. You're at 22, right? Then you're going to have 5 1.5 milers that go into every market. And then you're going to have a rotating schedule of 3 tracks that sell out 80% of their year's previous attendance, and it's going to be drawn on a whim. So it might be Martinsville for a second time. It might be whatever the track. That's how you're going to do it. You are going to change the schedule, and you are going to shorten the schedule by 6 events. So you go from February or January, Daytona to February, and then you end in September. You end before football has taken everybody's minds over.
And that's a big part of it too. Is football. Once football comes around, which it will in the next couple of weeks, it kind of takes NASCAR away because the average American is going to watch football over the NASCAR Cup Series. I think that the chase will kind of helps that, but still football.
The playoffs are the only
supreme.
reason to tune into NASCAR for the last 2 months, and I will say it. Everybody hates the playoffs. It's the only reason to tune in with a month and a half left to go. So on top of the playoffs, so back to my making NASCAR great again thing. So here's what you do: you start at Daytona, go to Atlanta. Then you go to a short track in Virginia. You go up, and then you go out to the West Coast. You make a big, gigantic circle of where you visit your tracks. So people can plan, hey, one of the things I liked about doing this last summer was the fact that I was able to realistically go to 2 tracks in 2 weekends. And that's what you do. You make it so people can plan a 2-3 week trip, vendor, make a nice little long camping trip around a couple of races, and that's how you get people to attend. Because if you tell me that I can attend 3 races within 3 weeks that are close enough to each other, I'll go to 2 or 3 of them. That's what you do. That's how you re-energize the sport right there, by making the tracks, a little more local, making it a little more set, and making a nice general game plan. And then you throw in a couple of wild cards, and you can have those be midweek events too. Just those are my ideas. Been thinking about this.
So real quickly here, we'll probably get back to this towards the end of the show as well. Casey Kane and Elliott Sadler both announced that they won't be back full-time racing next year. They announced that at the start of the month. So real quickly, what's your quick reaction on that?
I'm sad. Kane was my guy. I'm sad. We'll talk about that more later, though.
All right, so on the phone lines here with us live, our second guest of the day. And man, this kid is impressive. 16 years of age, and he just won a late model race at Thunder Road, beating up on the veterans. It's the driver of the number 1 VT Dodge. It's Evan Hallstrom. How you doing today, Evan?
Not bad, and yourself?
I'm pretty good. So, take us through the emotions of winning that first race last Thursday night.
Well, we started on the pole. We had a really good heat race. We started off the night right off the trailer really quick. The crew did a great job getting the car good in the shop. Usually, as you can see, is where races are won. I think we made one adjustment, and the car was really good. So we parked it, saved our stuff for the heat race, and came out of the gate. We were really quick, and we just checked out with it by probably a half a track, and so we just rode and finished that out with the win, and then went over, didn't have to race the Consi, so I got to go in the stands and hang out with some fans. And then we went into the feature, and we started on the pole, and I had pretty good confidence that we were going to be really good this week, and it turned out to work in our favor, really. And so we checked out with it. We had 3 cautions the whole night. I checked out with it the first time, and then the second time we had a good race, and then the third time it was pretty tight. The third time, my spotter said 5 to go, and believe it or not, the other night I was sleeping, and I said I was 5 car lengths ahead, and somebody woke me up and told me that. So it's just pretty cool that the memory's still clicking with days after the win. That's what my spotter told me on the radio, and it was still clicking. So I didn't even, I just tell myself the whole night that I wasn't in the lead, and then just so I'd stay calm and wouldn't screw up my rhythm that I had going. And it was I still can't believe it that I won at Thunder Road. And the youngest one to ever do it, as Ken Squire knows. He said I was the youngest one.
Right. So, 16 years old. So how did it feel at the beginning of the year to be racing against the very best of the best that go to Thunder Road on a weekly basis? These guys are much older than you. They're much more experienced than you on the track. Was it intimidating at first, or did you have confidence?
I'm a big 16-year-old, so I really don't. I do look at them different. Like, you got your Scott Dragon, there's a ton of people that race at Thunder Road.
Right.
That's raced there for years, and Jason Corliss. Those guys are the top-notch guys that run weekly. And so when I went there at first, I just, I took it one race at a time, tried to gain respect, gave them lifts if they started to come down. I don't want to be that young kid that is got to gain respect to get respect,
right.
And so that's what I did the first couple races. And then, believe it or not, actually some of the race car drivers now that I'm running up front are in, I don't know if they're in, how I'd put it, they race me like I'm a veteran, and it's really cool to see the respect come. Yeah, I'm sure that all of them hate it that I'm 16 and I'm beating them, but it's mainly a respect level. They've gained the respect from me. I've gained the respect from most, and it's just really paid off from gaining respect and going about my racing career the right way.
Yeah, for sure. So you not only drive the car, but you and your dad work on it, you build them together. Do you think that the family aspect of your team really helps play a role in your success on the track?
Yeah, right now I'm down in the shop, actually. We're working on getting another late model ready. And so, it helps a lot because I'm on iRacing a lot. I'm always on, whether I'm racing super late models, whatever I'm doing. I run hosted races, I host races. I'm always getting the feeling of a track, a different car, whatever it might be. And then coming down into the shop, and I build these things. I've stripped my late model down to the bare chassis last winter, pretty much with just my dad. And then when it came back, I had put all the interior in it myself and got it all ready, and with the help of my dad. And it's just an enjoyment to do it with family. My mom's a big supporter of everything I do. Yeah. She's always coming down to the shop on those late nights, checking in. It's an enjoyment to do it as a family, but I like it to keep it small because you don't have to worry about when work night is. It's just every night. It's in our blood. This is all I've ever known since I was born. My dad's been in racing for a long time. So is my mom. I think that's where they actually met, was at a race shop. And so, it's just always been always been what I know, and building fast race cars is what's awesome over the off season. So we're getting ready to regroup and build some more fast hot rods here in the shop, and I'm really looking forward to making them go fast. And really, as a driver, I mean, I've looked into Kyle Busch's history and watched some videos on him. I really like how he drives. He's a great. Actually, at Bristol, he got torn up there a little bit. I heard you guys were talking about him before, but you know, I've watched how he races, and he actually came to Thunder Road. So I mean, and he was right underneath the car, wrenching on it right with the guys. So I mean, this was just a vacation more so, but he was there right in there helping out, and that's people like that who I look up to. And the more you know about a race car, the better off you're going to be. There's not one, you can't know enough.
Yeah, definitely. So, what's your plan for the future now? Where would you like to see yourself, 5-10 years down the road?
Hopefully next year we have a wide view of next year. So we're hopefully going to run the ACT Tour some. Going to run the super late some, probably like 10 races. Really going to prep our game for the 250, which we're actually going to with the late model the night before this weekend. So, I mean, that's really what my plan is for next year. Probably, I don't know, my goal is to run the whole tour maybe, run 10 pass races and a couple big shows here and there and see how we fare out. I'd like to get down south maybe once, twice, 3 times next year. With the super, maybe Hickory show or 2. That'd be cool. Then in the near future, a couple years from now, I'd like to see myself in the next 2 years really be in the K&N East Series, K&N West. I mean, whatever that may be. Yeah. And then hopefully from there, my ultimate goal, any racer's dream should be Cup. Right. But I mean, I'd like to. I'm not settling for trucks, but I'd like to see myself in a truck ride. In I don't know, probably 5 years. Not really. I mean, I'm 16 now, so I'd like to see myself in a truck ride by the time I'm 18.
That'd be cool.
18. That's only 2 more years. 18, 19, somewhere right in there. It'd be cool.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for coming on the show today, Evan, and good luck the rest of the year. I know the Milk Bowl is coming up. Are you running the Milk Bowl this year?
Yeah, that's a big race for us. We'll be there. Thunder Road's not too far from my house. 15, 20 minutes. 30 at the tops, and I mean, I really got to thank while I'm on air, sponsors listening. I can't thank all my sponsors enough. Mid-State Dodge, Randolph Napa, Design Engineering Inc., Swift Springs. I mean, everybody that's on board. Click It or Ticket, Hallstrom Excavating, TriStar Racewear, Depot Square Pizzeria, LaJoy of Seating. Oh, man, I can go for days. Ton of people. The Waterbury Laundromat. There's just a ton of people. And my parents, of course, they do everything. My crew. I mean, my mom and dad have done everything to get me where I am today. So I really can't thank them enough. And I can't thank you guys enough, more important, for letting me be on the show of the groove, the Inside Groove, I think. The Inside Groove. Yeah.
Well, thanks for being on, man. It's real nice talking to you. Good luck with the rest of the year. Good luck with your future. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be back on before the year's out, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
All right, you.
That's Evan Hallstrom, everybody. Winner Thursday night at Thunder Road. You can catch him just about every Thursday night down at the nation's site of excitement in Barrie, Vermont, driving the number 1 VT Dodge late model.
I'll tell you what, the kid has got the sponsor plugs down, and let me tell you,
it's not his first time doing that.
That is not his first time doing an interview, and that's for to have the sponsor plugs down that well at 16, kid's going places right there. He knows what he's doing.
All right, so we're coming up on a week off here. The week off that Dustin's been advertising.
The week off that I've just been looking forward to for like 3 months.
So the Cup Series won't be racing, but the Xfinity Series will be in action at Road America. Kaz Gralla, we had him on the show earlier. He'll be there. Another big name, Bill Elliott.
Rookie of the Year contender, Bill Elliott.
Yeah, I think it's a long shot for Awesome Bill from Dawsonville to win the Rookie of the Year, but who knows? I mean, we've talked about it a few times on the show, but what do you, going into this race, what do you kind of expect out of Bill Elliott?
17th. The GMS car is bad. Like, I know, I don't want to be cynical, but he's going to get 17th or something, or he's going to go off a couple times. I think there are some good road course ringers coming into town. I think it's going to be a good race on top of the normal guys who are used to their teams, used to their cars. So, no, I think Bill Elliott will get a top 20 towards the back end of the top 20. But it'll be interesting to see. It'll be fun to watch. It's a storyline. Storylines are cool.
Yeah. So we have some time, so let's get back to Kane and Sadler retiring, and I think that this really opens things up here big time. For Christopher Bell with the 95.
Well,
and
it's interesting.
Trevor Bayne with the 1.
It's interesting because Christopher Bell, he said, I'm going to run Xfinity next year. Bob Levine, the owner of Levine Family Racing, was kind of blindsided by the Kane news.
Right.
According to him, they were sending contracts back and forth still. So I guess, that opens up a seat. But it wasn't because Kane didn't want a seat anymore. It was because Kane was just like... And Kane
wants to step away.
Kane also was approached about the 41 car. So it's like Kane wants to step away, which is really interesting to me. Trevor Bayne had a good performance at Bristol. Finished 11th.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's going to go down to the Xfinity Series quite yet. He might be able to find himself a Cup ride again. I don't know he's still under contract. I don't know what's going to happen with that 6 car. Yeah,
and I think Ricky Stenhouse's kind of down year has really shown well for Trevor Bayne at the same time because, last year I think it was a deal where Stenhouse pretty much lucked out and won a couple of plate races.
Oh, yeah.
And Trevor Bayne was still running about the same as he has been for the last 3 years in a bad Roush car. But now, you go this year where everybody had, I think a lot of people had some pretty good expectations for the Roush cars coming into the year. This was the year maybe this team is, going to be on their way back up to the
Ricky
top.
has full sponsorship for the most part, you think, okay, Trevor Bayne's got his Advocare, they'll be able to do well, and just hasn't been there. And I think bringing Matt Kenseth in, and Matt Kenseth has basically said...
hasn't done anything in that car
Kenseth has
either.
basically said, the cars are crap. Right. Like, that's basically what he said.
Right.
So, it's
I think that does end up helping Trevor Bayne. So, last couple of minutes here, I do want to make sure everybody knows this, that me and Dustin in our fantasy game we played for
you
Bristol.
Won, didn't you?
I did.
By a lot.
By quite a bit. So, basically how we're going to score this is add up the drivers' finishes.
Okay.
Whoever has the lowest score combined at the end of the season will win the championship for the Inside Groove.
All right.
However,
cool. We want to open this up to folks on Facebook. We should open this up.
Maybe we could. We could do that.
Public contest.
Dustin's combined score was 73. He had Kyle Busch, who finished 20th, Ryan Blaney, who finished 7th, Brad Keselowski was 16th, Stenhouse had a good car, I'll give you that. But he just was he Stenhoused it and finished 24th. Clint Boyer was 6th. I had just 50. Harvick was 10th. Elliott was 3rd. Larson 2nd. My only bad one was Truex Jr. finished 30th, and Eric Jones was 5th. So I got 3 of the top 5.
Man, I should. I mean, if Kyle Busch's car stays together, I win.
But yeah, that's all we have for you today here on the Inside Groove. We'll be back next Monday. New time, 7 o'clock. So Dustin can get here.
Because I coach volleyball all the time, and I forgot volleyball ends at like 6 o'clock.
So yeah, Dustin will not have to book it here next week.
That'll be nice.
I'm Nick Mumley. He is Dustin Tanner. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again next week. Again, 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock next week.
7 to 8 next week.
7 to 8.
Have a good one, everybody.